continuing a series called Dedicate. And it goes right along with the theme of going, hey, last week was Father's Day, and we had a child dedication. If you missed that, newbranch.net's our website. You can check out that. And also the beginning of this message series where we talked about dedicating our life to our family. How do we do that? How do we dedicate our family? What does it mean to dedicate? We took a look at that. Today, though, we're going to take it a step further and say, hey, as we look at graduates, I don't know how you felt, but when I graduated high school, I remember that being one of the big milestones in your life. And I just remember going, hey, there's so much hope for the future, but there's also kind of a little bit of fear, right? To go, hey, there's an unexpected future. And now that I look back at 26 years or however long it's been of graduating, I realize now that I go, life didn't turn out exactly like I thought. Did you know that? And today we want to give you a plan for a future, okay? Today we want to talk a little bit about dedication, and what I want to do is I want to pick up on a key principle, not mine, but something that's found in the Bible. And what I'd like you to do is maybe write it down and take some notes today, because this is a passage of Scripture you can come back to again and again. Now, a lot of times we'll use 3 points or something like that. Today it's really just one key principle. So I'd like to share the principle. It might not make sense at first, and that's okay, or kind of like, man, I don't know. Are you sure you want to go there? And I do, because I have a feeling that this could be this is one that you go, hey, like if you were rock climbing, this would be the pin in the wall that's holding you up. This would be the stake in the wall, that this is something worth staking your life on. That if you get this, your life will be blessed. If you don't, your life will not, okay? And the principle is this, you can write it down. Compromise will not erase life's tension. It only weakens your resolve. You can write it down if you want to. Compromise will not erase life's tension. It will only weaken your resolve. Now let me just kind of explain just for a minute. The first thing you got to understand about this, and we'll unpack this through one scripture in the Bible. It's not a principle in the Bible. It is the principle in the Bible. I will tell you, though, today, this really has to do for people that have decided to follow Christ. If you haven't decided to follow Christ and you try to apply this, it may work some, but it won't do for you. God will do for you what you cannot do for yourself. So if you need help with that, pay attention. If you're here today and you go, hey, I'm not a Christ follower, you are welcome to be here. And by the end, you might go, hey, you know what? I do want to be a Christ follower. But I just need to be clear that one thing that doesn't work is to apply this without Christ in your life. If you are a Christ follower, some people are struggling because they don't get that this is a key life principle to be a follower. And it's so huge in all of our lives. So there's 2 warnings before we get started that I want to kind of check to say, hey, if you want to actually get this, because some of us would miss this from the beginning, so I want to just lay out 2 things, kind of like warnings to go, hey, pay attention, because you could miss this if you don't get this. The first thing is this, is if you've been following for a while, or you go, hey, you know what, I'm not graduating high school this year, so how does this apply to me? That's really great. And you're looking back and you're going, hey, you know what? This message applies to somebody else. I want to help you with that today to go, hey, if you're thinking about somebody else and you want to share this later, that's great. That's why we put it online. You're welcome to share this with somebody that might need it. But for the sake of this morning, I don't want you to think of anybody else. I want you to think of yourself. Because here's what I know. Life, there's one constant thing in life. You want to know what it is? Change. Did you know that? Life will always change. And so as you face change, there's something you have to understand, and it's this, is that compromise will not erase life's tension. There'll also always be tension in life. Did you know that? I know that's probably not a positive thing to say for people, but there will always come a time where your faith will be tested, that God will test your faith, and part of that will be is life will test your faith. And when it does, if you compromise, it won't weaken, it won't erase the tension that you face in life. It'll only weaken your resolve. So today I want you to lean into it. This is for all of us. It's not for somebody else, okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is that sometimes when we look at this principle, here's what's going to happen. And this is the big danger, okay? And this is what I probably see the most in my life. And unfortunately, because I lead you guys, I see it in your life too, okay? If I was to be real honest. A lot of us will look at these principles and we'll go, you know what? He is so right today. In fact, you might feel a little bit of guilt. And one thing about church is this, is that that guilt sometimes can be a good feeling. It's kind of like, oh man, I relate to that because I feel a little bit guilty about it. So it touched my life, and you'll leave going, now I know something, but you won't apply it, and it will do you no good. This is one of those that if you ask somebody and you go, do you know what you're doing and it's not right? And you'll go, yeah, I know that that's a principle. I know I should be following God in this, but I'm going to keep going. And if you do that, you'll suffer for it. In fact, it says that in the book of Proverbs. We'll give you that verse in a little bit. It says that the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and suffer for it. Today is a wake-up call to say, hey, when your life is tested, because it will be, there will come a time that your principles that are based on God, if you're a Christ follower, especially during times of graduation or transitions in life or certain seasons of your life, some people, you're right in that. Some of it's really good, but some of the transitions in life are very difficult. And you're going to come a time where you're going to be tested. And some of you guys know that, right? I mean, like it could be different things in your life. It could be, hey, I need to follow God in, not eating so much. I don't know. And there comes a time where all of a sudden you go, hey, I'm making progress. And then there'll come a time where the old habits will call you back. You ever had that happen? I have, right? It's like Krispy Kreme. Why is it here? Right now, today. Satan made that or something. I don't know, right? Or if you're trying to stop smoking, there'll be a time where you go, hey, I've stopped and stopped and stopped. And then there'll be a time where it gets very difficult and you're just like, forget it. I'm just going to go back and do it again. Or maybe it's an addiction where you go, hey, it's drinking, and you go, I just need one drink, and you think that one drink's going to resolve it. Or you think that, hey, you've set some principles in motion for a morality piece of your life that says, hey, I'm not going to have sex before I get married. Or you know what, I used to mess up so bad, but now I've set a boundary, and then all of a sudden you find yourself back there, and you think, if I just give in just a little bit, it won't happen. But what I want you to understand today is this, is that compromise will not erase life's tension. It will only weaken your resolve. The problem will still be there. After, and this is what I want you to do, I want you to fast forward in your mind today and think about that, hey, if you start going down that path, if you give in, just think for a second, where will that lead? Because it is a path. It is connected. Life is very connected. And as our graduates face it, if there was one thing I wish I had known in life, is not to treat life like it's so disconnected. That one thing will lead to another. And if I compromise a little bit here, I start to slide down that path, and it's like quicksand, and it's very hard to get out of. Now, some of you guys, that's where you find yourself at today. You're already in the quicksand. That's okay. This is not about throwing guilt at you. It's about going from where you're at. But I think anybody that's in the quicksand of life, anybody done that? You would say, I would give anything back to go back to that moment and not start to slide back into it. So don't do it. Don't give in that one time. Because why? Because compromise won't erase the tension that you feel. We're going to give you some warnings today, and we'll unpack that through a passage of Scripture in the Bible. So here's what I want to do. I want to go to kind of a familiar passage for us. We've preached on it in a few years ago. If you've been here, if you haven't, that's okay, because we'll catch you up. Daniel chapter 1 is what we want to look at today. If you're graduating or you want to be a success in life, there's two people in the Bible that I would highly recommend that you study. The first one is Joseph, who's found in the book of Genesis, and the second one is Daniel. Both of these guys started off and they purposed to follow God, and their lives were absolutely amazing. Now, it wasn't a life free of tension, but it was a life with unbelievable success. So if you want to know what it's like to be successful, these two guys have what it takes. Daniel chapter 1, where we pick up, here's kind of where he lives at. Daniel came at a time in the nation of Israel right before the exile, which means God had been warning them, hey, change your ways, or I'm going to send another nation in to come and take you as slaves. And finally, after warning and warning and warning, God finally sent a nation, and the nation was called Babylon. It was the greatest empire in the world in ancient times. And he sent a king, one of the most ruthless kings that's ever lived, named Nebuchadnezzar. And what Nebuchadnezzar did was the first time he came, he decided, hey, I'm not just going to knock down your walls and kill all you and take some of you as slaves. I'm just going to knock down your wall and come in and just take the best and the brightest, okay? What I want to do is I want to pick out who is the best kids, who are the 16-year-olds, who are the most beautiful among you, who are the smartest among you, who are the best, and we'll take them to Babylon, and we'll make them kind of Babylonian, but I want to have, basically what he wanted to do was he was trying to produce a super race of people. And he said, and plus, he's there in his kingdom, and he goes, when I look out my door, I want to see the best and the brightest. When I talk to them, I want people that are smart. And if they don't work out, we can't do this nowadays. They just kill them off, right? Who would he pick? Think about that today. If we lived then, would he pick our kids? Way out here in Zuni. But anyway, would he pick our kids? And so basically, hey, they are from a small town, kind of like we are, and now all of a sudden, the Mecca of the world comes and they take you. Now, think about how that would feel. This is a big transition in life. It's kind of like graduating from high school with a little bit negative note that, they may have killed off your family and stuff like that. But they come in, they snatch you, they're taking you off to captivity. You're sad about what happened. You're probably traumatized, a lot of horrible things that he did to take the people from there. But as you go, they start to treat you a little bit better. And they go, the king of the world has selected you. That's pretty awesome, isn't it? You're about to have the biggest transition that you've ever had. You've never been anywhere. There's some people that have never left Isle of Wight County. Some of us left and we went, man, I wish I hadn't, right? And come back. But the idea would be is, hey, maybe you've never seen the world. All you've seen is country, and some places don't have broadband internet, and you live like in the third world. And now you're going to the first world, right? They're going to the greatest place, and they're seeing the most amazing things. And life is about to change in an amazing way. And as they go, here's what happens. The king says to them, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you all of the best. Everything that I have, I'm going to make available to you guys. I'm going to train you, teach you, clean you. For 3 years, we're going to prep you for being around the king. Now, there's no problem with anything. You're going to get the best and the finest. We already believe in you, but here's what we don't believe in. You remember that God that you believed in? We just tore down your temple. Okay? We just took artifacts out of that. Your God wasn't so great. He didn't show up. Remember your parents that I just killed? He didn't do a very good job protecting you guys. So drop that stuff, okay? There's new gods now. You live in Babylon now. You belong to Babylon. And you need to stop that. As long as you do that, we'll all get along, okay? That's how it's going to be. And I'm going to give you the best of everything that's there to offer. And so that's kind of where we want to pick up today. I'm going to kind of skip around just a little bit, but you kind of get that feeling, okay? So here's what happens. Daniel chapter 1, verse 5, it says this. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. That's probably what excited me the most about this passage. It's like, oh man, that's awesome. Okay, and they were trained for 3 years, and after that, they were to enter the king's service. That's just what we talked about. You're going to have the greatest education. You're going to have the greatest stuff, but your culture has to become like us. You got to drop your culture and become like us. And most of them were doing that. And one man, and as you look at this, I want you to think of this. What Daniel was realizing is very slowly, they took a number of years. 3 years. You know how long that is? That's about the amount of the time people go to college. This is why I think this passage applies so much to somebody that's graduating, because that's exactly what a college feels like, right? You go there, and now you're away from home, and there's all this amazing stuff, and there's all these amazing parties, and everything fits except for your old beliefs, right? Now you're going to have to decide. Your parents aren't here anymore, right? Some of you guys had that experience in the military. Your parents aren't here no more. You used to believe that way, that worked then, but now you're our culture. You're Navy now, right? You're Marine now. You got to drop that culture, and that's exactly where to work. And so as Daniel looked at it, he said, hey, here's what's going to happen. Slowly, they're going to cause me, I'm going to slip down. And if I give in, I'm going to start sliding down, just like we talked about. That compromise will not erase the tension. It will only weaken my resolve. And slowly, I'll start to become like them, and I'll start to give up everything that I believe. And it happens very slowly. Some of you guys, you know, because you've had that happen to you, right? And today, we want you to wake up to it. If you have, this is not about getting you stuck in guilt. It's about saying there is unbelievable hope for you today. Okay? One verse that I would like you to write down is this. It's Proverbs 22, verse 3. It says this, a prudent man sees danger and takes refuge, but the simple keep going and they suffer for it. If I were to say something to challenge somebody that's in a change in life, whether you're old or new to this, is that life is very connected. And that as you look down life's path, if you just keep going, the biggest thing that I see is a lot of people go, oh yeah, I know I know that that's wrong. I know that this isn't the right way to go. But when they look at it and you say, hey, what are you going to do about it? They go, yeah, I'm just going to keep going. I think it's going to work out. No, it won't. It'll only get worse, and it will only weaken your resolve. Daniel recognized that. Verse 8, but Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and the wine. And he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself in that way. Resolve means this. It means that this is as far as I'm going to go. He looked at what they were offering, and they said, hey, we're going to feed you from the king's table. And as he looked at it, what I want you to understand is that he looked at what they were going to offer, and he was thinking to himself, I don't think I can eat that. Now, there's several reasons why. A lot of people, there's a lot of debate on this. I've studied it. Maybe you haven't. I enjoy studying stuff like this. And so it was kind of like, why doesn't he want to eat? It could be that, hey, I don't want to drink wine because we have alcoholics in our family and that's just what we want to do. It could be, a lot of people believe that it was not kosher, right? He's Jewish and therefore this is not their dietary laws, that there's something on that table. I don't know what it was because it didn't really describe it, but it could be that it actually violated a true principle. Or it could just be, hey, this is a matter of conscience of my heart, not necessarily something that's so bad or even that it's wrong for everybody, but it wouldn't be right for me, and I'm not going to keep sliding down. It could just be, we had a series called Guardrails, and that's one of the things we looked at was, it could have just been a guardrail for Daniel that said, hey, if I start going there, I know I can't keep going. You know, for some of us, that's the way it is, right? If I have one drink, I know I'm not going to stop until I keep doing it, right? If I start eating that food, you have no idea how much of it I'm going to eat, so I've got to stop it here, or I'm just going to keep going. Whatever it is, he recognized that if I compromise here, I'm going to start sliding, and it's not going to resolve the tension, because tomorrow the tension's still going to be there, but it's going to weaken my resolve. So he resolved, I'm not going to do it. The other thing I want you to see is how he did it. He asked the chief official for permission. This is something that I think as the church as a whole, including ours, that we struggle with. He didn't come there and say, hey guys, I'm a Christian, I can't do this. You guys are such pagans, you're the worst people in the world. He didn't even get into who's right and who's wrong. What he said was, I can't do this. And he asked permission. He did it in a very respectful way. If there's something that I see that's missing in our Christianity, in the time that we live in, it's this. If you look on Facebook, you will see the voice of Christians saying some things that are really accurate, but in a very, very mean way, a very, very unrespectful way. If you don't believe that, think about the piece of the government you don't like the most, and how do you respond to them? Is it respectful? Would you have said that we asked permission? And you might be going, well, that's different because that was back then, and I don't know, were they really that bad? If you want to read about the worst king that's ever sat on the throne of the world, read about what Nebuchadnezzar did. I hate these officials. I can't believe what they did, and we start to rant against them. It doesn't help us. This is a side note, but it's a big note. That if you want to make a change in this world, I remember what Martin Luther King said. He said, hate does not get rid of hate. Only love can do that. And I got to tell you, a lot of what I see, especially among the political side of Christianity today, has nothing to do with love. It has everything to do with hate. Be careful that you're not fighting hate with hate. Oh, I can't stand that official. Next week, we're going to talk about our country. And I remember the last time that I had a message about the country a couple years ago, and I said to pray for our president. It was a different president. And I had people leave the church because I asked them to pray for the president. Did you know that? Because they couldn't believe that we would pray for him. If we did pray for him, it would be that something falls on him or his brakes go out at 100 or something like that, right? It's true. Check your heart. If you want to have what Daniel had, and by the way, when you get to the end of this, you're going to see one of the most successful people who's ever lived. You know how he did it? He did it with respect. But they don't offer respect, I know. You give respect even when you don't get respect. Big, big deal. Anyway. Just a side note. Okay, verse 9. Here's what happens. Now God. You want to circle something? Now God. If there was anything that's become the biggest deal in my life, even in this past week, because there's several things that happened that just irritated me. Going, why God, right? But in this situation, Daniel goes to them not knowing what will happen, because here's the thing. As he asked permission, can I tell you what that would mean in Babylon? You see, they're not there to say you're trying out. They're here to say, hey, you're around the king because we selected you. If you don't make selection, we're just going to kill you. And you know we will, because you watched us kill your family back in Israel, right? You watched how we're ruthless. We don't need you. You're not trying out like we care about you. There is no rules other than make the king happy. That's why you're here. You're here just to make him happy. Now God, he took a risk. Now God, you know what I see here? God is watching. We said this a couple weeks ago, but I think it has to factor in, because I don't know about you, but I've had some things that happened even this last week that made me go, what is happening, right? How could all of this happen until we say, now God? You know what that means? It means God placed you right where you are, right with the set of circumstances that you have. You know the word of the Lord, you know the word that came to me in my quiet time? I'm not real ooky dooky spooky kind of person, but one of the things that has been a resounding theme is God saying, I don't apologize. I don't apologize that you're in Babylon. I put you there. And I don't know if that's going to help you or hurt you today, but wherever you are is where God has placed you. Now, you might have done some things to get yourself in that mess. You may have not, and that's really the person I want to lean into this, that maybe there's things that are happening in your life that you're going, I just can't understand why God would let this happen. That's really the person I'm talking to, because I have a feeling that's where Daniel was. And when you're in that moment, you will be tempted more than any other time to weaken your resolve. You will be tempted more than any other time, and you will feel more justified to do wrong than any other time. Every other person that went to Babylon said, we're just going to comply because we don't believe in God anymore, because he didn't do what we thought he would do. He didn't do a miracle in this moment and rescue us from Babylon, because God had a purpose in Babylon. See, what you might not understand is God has a purpose for where he puts you. I know that's hard. And at the end of this, you're going to see what God's purpose is with them, and maybe, just maybe, you'll realize that he has a purpose where you are as well. You see, in this moment of tension, you have no idea what hangs in the balance. For those of you that know the story of Daniel, maybe you do. You have no idea how Daniel changed the course of this world. You have no idea how God could change the course of your world right where you are in Babylon. God has a purpose in Babylon. Not everybody's teaching that. It's super, super important. Now God, just lean into that. Okay, verse 9. Now God had caused the officials to show favor and compassion to Daniel. He didn't know that. But God had placed him there, and he goes there, and the only person that speaks up is Daniel, and he says, hey, I don't want to do this. And you know what they say to him? Now, I put this that he caused favor, and I'm going to just kind of explain the rest. And this week in our quiet time, we read one chapter a day. So if you've never read the Bible, it's a great week to start. You can start reading the book of Daniel. It's really something. And so one chapter a day, and it's on the back of your handout where you can read. And what you're going to see if you read the rest of his passages is Daniel goes to his leader, to the big leader, and he says, hey, I don't want to eat this food. And the leader says, I don't care. I mean, that's pretty much what he says. He goes, that's all nice. You're a good guy. We really like you, Daniel. But no. The answer is no. Okay. But then he says, but Daniel doesn't give up. This is what I want you to see. Daniel doesn't say, okay, but then I just won't do it. What he says is he goes, hey, would you be willing to try it out for 10 days? Can I tell you something about God? Don't underestimate what God can do in your situation. Don't ever be afraid of God showing up when you say, hey, this is something that God has brought you to. Now, don't put God to the test in the way that you go, hey, you didn't hear from God, and now you say God's going to do something. That's a really bad place to put God. In fact, Jesus said that when Satan said that to him. He said, do not put the Lord your God to the test. But in the book of Malachi, it says, hey, when God has called you to do something like giving a tithe or whatever else, he says, hey, see if I don't show up. And God has placed him there, and he's saying, hey, this is a principle that God did, and you know what? I believe that God will show up. So if you give me 10 days, I bet you anything, we'll be just as healthy. Because what they were doing is he was saying, hey, if you don't eat the meat and you only eat vegetables or whatever it is you want to eat, I don't understand that. That's a whole level of commitment I don't understand, okay, giving up meat. But anyway, but he's like, hey, I'm going to give up meat and just eat, I'm going to go completely vegetarian. and so he said, but we'll be just as healthy as everybody else. And the guy said, no, but here's what I will let you do. He said, and the reason he said no, can I tell you why the official said no? Because he goes, if you're not healthy enough, they'll kill me for not taking care of you. So no. But here's what I will do. Talk to your work leader, and if he says it's okay, I'll just not look at it. But if you're not doing right, then you're going to have to knock that stuff off, okay? And what happened? He goes to the work leader. The work leader says, okay, we'll let you try it out. But if it doesn't work, you got to stop this because you're endangering all of our lives. And Daniel understands that on the crisis moment where these things come, this is the stage that God wants. The reason why God's not using a lot of us is when we see these moments, we all of a sudden look at it and we go, how could you have placed me here? I'll just go ahead and compromise my convictions. I didn't realize that God was setting a stage that he can do a miracle. Can I tell you something about miracles? God only does them when there's a crisis. Did you know? If you have a crisis, you're in line for a miracle. No crisis, no miracle. And some people are not seeing a miracle because right on the stage that God has set for your life, you look at the crisis and you go, why God? Not now, God. Right? That's exactly where you're at. And today is the day that this could change everything for you. That God has placed you where you are, and he didn't call you to fit in. He called you to stand out. Now, do it in a respectful way. That's why I said it. Too many Christians are standing out in a negative way. But Daniel came and he respected these guys and they said, hey, we really like who you are. We like how you're doing it. We like how you approach this. The answer is no, but he didn't take no for an answer. He came back to him again and said, well, we're going to try it this way. And you know what? They did it. And here is the results. Verse 17. To these four young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning, and Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. They were better than everybody else in Babylon. We'll go a little bit further with that in just a minute. That don't be afraid because God could show up in a mighty way wherever you are at. That God has placed you where you are, not to fit in, but to stand out. And some of us are going, oh, but I don't want to do this. No, I just don't understand because God left me here and he's not doing what I want him to do. And what you have to ask yourself is the same thing I do, which is, how could God, remember we had a message a few weeks ago on Nehemiah, and he said, what would a man like me do? Why did God put you where he did? You ever thought of that? He didn't put somebody else there. He put you there for this reason, for this time, for this moment. Now, wait a minute. I didn't just say one man, right? I said Daniel was the only one that said it, but these four men. Maybe you thought, what is this about? You can read about this for yourself. When Daniel stepped up, you know what happened? 3 other guys stepped up with him. That's not a lot. Out of the thousands of people they took from Israel, 4. 4 is better than 1, though, right? You know what that means? That means buddy up. It means the reason why some of us don't have it is because, hey, when you step up and you don't weaken your resolve, other people will come around you and let them. Some people you're trying to do all this on your own, and it's never going to work. What God gave him was, he said, hey, if you're willing to stand up for your principles, if you're willing to stand out instead of just fitting in, what I'm going to do is I'll send some other guys around you, but let them be there for you. And you know what? These guys had a bond that you have no idea. And the things that were to come, this isn't the last moment in their life. This is the first moment in their life, okay? Those of you that graduated, you understand it, right? I mean, it's like, hey, you're thinking of all these decisions, and now you're making all these life choices. And you know, when you join the Navy, that's not the last decision you make. That's the first step, right, in this long process. Same thing goes for them. And they needed people around them. Can I tell you something today? Some of you guys are doing this all alone. Buddy up. That's why we have small group. If you think you're going to stand, when you read the rest of the book of Daniel, find out what happens to these guys. If you think this is it and this is the last time their faith is going to be tested, you couldn't be more wrong. And they needed each other to help each other. By the way, just because you're first doesn't mean you're best. I learned that as a church planner. Sometimes it means you're kind of dumb, right? But Daniel went first, but these other guys came alongside him, and I have a feeling that as they went, they held him up. This is so important to your life, I'm telling you. It's so important to your life. Okay. Buddy up. Verse 19, we'll skip down to 19. The king talked with them, and he found none to be equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, so they entered the king's service. When it came time, they followed what God said, and they were top of the line. You know, sometimes Christians stand out in a bad way. They didn't. Let's say they went to the official and they had said, they had cursed these people. Let's say that as they stood before King Nebuchadnezzar, they told him exactly what they thought of him. Nothing about what was going to happen in this story would have happened. Can I tell you, the story of Daniel is one of the most amazing stories that I've probably ever read. The story of Daniel is about a guy who gets taken from his family, and he's taken to a foreign country. And because he follows God and he steps up each time, he becomes second in command of the entire nation of Babylon. Did you know that? He becomes the chief wise man in Babylon. That's where it goes. There's many, many stories about these other guys that were with Daniel, and they're incredible. King Nebuchadnezzar is one of the most ruthless people. If you ever read about the things that he did, he's one of the most ruthless people who has ever sat on the throne of anything. If you read about what he did in Israel later when he comes back, it's unbelievably violent. But can I tell you something about Nebuchadnezzar? Because of the life of Daniel, the most ruthless, awful king of the world became a follower of God. Did you know that? Because Daniel did it in a respectful way. Because Daniel understood that he could use an Israelite outside of his country if he would only follow God. And some of us, that's exactly where God has placed you. This is not the end of his story. This is the beginning of his story. And I'm telling you, what Daniel understood and what we have to understand today is this one principle. We're going to put it back up here on the screen. That compromise will not erase the tension, but it would only, if you compromise, it will only weaken your resolve. I'm going to tell you, we're going to put it up here on the screen, so thanks. A key life principle, and the reason why I want it here is this, is that while it may seem like a small thing, you really want to go here, is that when you get in your moment, that God is going to bring a moment to your life where you're going to go, the test is now. And some of you are facing that moment right now. And I'm only saying this because here's what you're thinking. I'm going to take a pass because I don't want to stand out. I'm going to take a pass. And I have a feeling for some of us, and one of the biggest reasons why at times like this in my life, even after becoming a pastor, that I've taken a pass, is because I was angry. Because God, how could you put me in this situation? And today I want you to wake up to, God has a perspective for your life that maybe you don't have. But if you compromise your standards of behavior in that moment, it won't resolve the tension. Because I've done it before, have you? When I give in the towel and I go back to my addictions, it's still there tomorrow, isn't it? I want you to think about that. It's a path. There's only one place to go, and that's to God. And when you stand up like Daniel did, he will show up in a mighty way in your life, even in ways that you don't think. See, it's not about understanding. Do you think Daniel understood what God's plan was for his life? He didn't. Do you think Moses understood what his plan was for his life? He did not. It isn't about you understanding it. It's about you trusting God. And when you do, you have no idea what God could do with your life. If you will take this principle and do it, it would be absolutely powerful. One thing I want to say before I close today is this. For some of you, you're thinking this couldn't happen for you. Some of you, that's right where you are. And you know that you are faced with a decision to make whether you are going to compromise the convictions that God has given you, or are you going to stand up and resolve, hey, I'm not going to do that? For some of you, though, you did compromise, didn't you? Some of you, it was years ago, and you chose to go down that path, and there's nothing like when God has given you freedom and you go back. But it happens to a lot of us, if not all of us, right? And you're here today and you're going, I just don't think God could use me again. And a message like today only puts salt in the wound. It's going, hey, I really wish that high school person wouldn't do what I did, because you know what I did? I went down that path, and now it's very hard to get untangled from the life that I've made. And I don't know that God can use me. But what I want to tell you today is this, is that he can. You can't go back and undo those things. And yes, there's probably consequences that you're living with. But here's the thing. God can help untangle you. But it starts now. Don't get down in that depression. It's funny how Satan will tempt you to say, hey, just give in just a little bit. And then once you do it, he goes, hey, you're just so far gone, God could never use you again. You can start where you are. And it starts, honestly, with a God who sent his one and only son to die for your sins. And he rose from the dead, and he says, hey, if you want to, I'll restore a relationship with God. And then we can help work on all these other things. And then, you know what? This principle applies again. Don't think you're so far gone that you can't do this. But you got to start today. If we will resolve to follow God right where we are, you have no idea what hangs in the balance. Daniel changed the world. Can I tell you something? God could change your world too. God could change my world too. And we can do that together. Okay? So let's stand for prayer. I pray for you guys today.